I would really like to thank you for the book because I deeply enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Those are very kind words. Thank you, Niko.
And there's also, because I'm not a huge consumer of books on spirituality, but I have read quite a few. And I was also very touched by the fact that the unpretentiousness of your book.
Thank you. I take that as great praise.
Yes, I also thought that may have something to do with perhaps with you not being American.
I know exactly what you mean. It was very nice. I don't know if you read the foreword, but it's I follow a spiritual teacher called Adyashanti.
Yes.
And we asked him to write the foreword, and he did that. And one of the things he said, I'm not sure it's in the foreword, but in a telephone conversation, he said, usually books of that kind, the author speaks downwards to his audience, but you don't do that. And I thought, oh, well, what a nice mirroring or feedback. I thought, wonderful.
It seems like as a reader, we may with you follow how Björn Lindeblad makes his way through life, and it's got a warmth and humor and humility in it.
Yeah. And it's also, if the reader can identify with the writer, they take it in on a much more full level. So if I show myself in all my humanity and with all my shortcomings, then it's much easier for the reader to feel, okay, this is another human being human. And then you read it in a different way and it goes in a different way. So it to me, that's the way to do it. It comes natural.
Yes.
I don't wake up in the morning thinking I am a blessing to the Swedish humanity.
Yes, that is no doubt a good recipe for life. Yes. Because your book has been so enormously popular and so many people have found the message, especially now in times of the pandemic, what kind of feedback have you heard, and what kinds of thoughts or feelings do you get from the fact that all of a sudden you have so many readers and so many listeners?
Yeah, well, there's a variety. One very common observation is the one you just did. They find it pleasant to read because the author is not putting themselves in a I know and I'm going to tell you how it is position. One common reaction is people who are not usually interested in spiritual book or self-help books have been recommended this book and read it with some skepticism or reluctance and find themselves enjoying it a lot. So I get, like a lot of doctors and policemen and lawyers and groups of professionals that usually are not the ones that are most interested in what I have to say, they found themselves enjoying this book. And then people also say that they not only read it once, but they keep coming back to it. It becomes a little bedside companion, for like someday you have a particular difficulty and you look through the book and you find something that's helpful at that moment. And I think also in this time of Corona that we've lived through, the book was published well after Corona exploded on the world stage. Mm-hmm. A lot of us have been more confronted with big questions and topics: death, old age, sickness, separation, pain, all these unavoidable human experiences. So I think it was timely for the book also, because most people are a bit more oriented towards the big questions, the existential questions of life. Because of Corona, we've all been affected in some way.
There's some of the brilliant quotations that I found there, and that I also touched me, is when you talk about the need to let go of your own thoughts and your hopes and your wishes, and has to do when you had just moved to an English monastery, and things were done in a way that was different from the very orderly Asian tradition where you had just come from. And then the teacher there, the Ajahn, is it Suchito?
Exactly.
Yes, who said that you should that chaos may rattle you, but order can kill you.
Yeah, it's sweet, isn't it?
It is.
He was a quotation machine, He was so quote worthy.
Yes.
As soon as he spoke, when I was in the same room, I just really pricked up my ears and really wanted to hear what he had to say.
Yeah.
A very funny man. I love a quote like that. You almost ruin it if you try to explain it too much, but most people immediately understand what it means.
I think for the little control freak that lives in
exactly. Another day, there was some situation where somebody was trying to fix something which was kind of not quite fixable. So he said, well, it's a bit like trying to rearrange the sun chairs on the deck of the Titanic. It's like, this is going down.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There's. I would venture to guess that for most people who are only superficially familiar with Buddhism, the amount of humor that goes in there is a surprise, and that.
I think I have the reason why, because one of the Buddha's discoveries were identifying fully with your thinking, with your ego, is not such a good idea. So if you take yourself too seriously, your fellow Buddhists will make jokes with you and help you to see that, whoops, I think I fell into the trap of believing everything I think, or, something like that. So as you know, my Buddhist monastic tradition was English speaking, and a lot of the monks and nuns were of British origins. So there was a certain Britishness in the humor, and part of the British humor is, of course, making fun of yourself and making fun of each other. So there was a lot of that. There was once a radio station that asked me, when did you laugh the most? Before you were a monk, when you were a monk, or after you were a monk? And I knew immediately the answer, when I was a monk. We laughed a lot.
Yeah. It's and it shines through in the text. And there's all kinds of sort of connections to our contemporary present life and the remote Buddhist monastery in northern Thailand. Like the person who, can't remember the exact quote here, but who said that he hopes that when death comes, it will be like walking out into the fresh air from a concert by Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, it's short and sweet, but you understand exactly, don't you?
Yeah.
And that was very important to me. If it's a very Buddhist book that's just exotic and weird and strange, that emphasizes a strange lifestyle and strange rules and strange schedule for the day, it's not going to speak to people. So I made an effort to make it relevant to readers in the West, like Finland and Sweden. So it was important for me that it would be relevant. So I did my best for that.
Yes, I believe you've succeeded well, because the feeling that I get as a reader is that there's absolutely there's no intention of making a Buddhist out of me, but there's a serious or humorous intention to make me realize a little bit more about myself and maybe be a little bit happier in the times that we live in. Right, wonderful. Glad to hear it. Do you get contacted a lot by readers? I'm personally not on Twitter, for example, but things like that. Do you get, questions and requests for advice and things like that? That's been going on for a good few years.
I now have a difficult neurological disease called ALS. So
Yes.
my hands don't work for keyboards. So I've had to limit my responses. Usually I'm quite active on social media. It's fun, it's a forum where I can get feedback on what people have experienced reading the book, and just, happy thumbs up and congratulations.
Yeah.
But these days, my life has become more simple. I'm not able to write very much, so I can only write short messages. These days, it's more people write to me, and by responding with a few emojis, at least I acknowledge I've read it. I'm happy I got it. There's also, a long time ago, I read some advice for the modern economy that said, everything that can be replicated digitally, give it away for free. And I thought, I like that idea. And then the things that you cannot replicate digitally, like a book, for example, then you can charge a little money. And so I've chosen to, online, I've uploaded 400 or 500 guided meditations on various streaming platforms. So there's a lot of free material available for the interested person. And my talk is up for free on YouTube. Somebody made a TV program about me that's available for free on YouTube. So I've just chosen to make my stuff very freely available. So there's lots for those who are interested.
Yeah. And one of the things that comes really strongly across in the book, of course, is the fact that, as you referred to the ALS that you were diagnosed with a few years ago, and that somehow made you realize what you have learned in your years at the monastery. Unless I misquote you there.
Absolutely. I was a bit surprised, actually. It was almost like I found myself facing the challenge more functionally than I expected. It was, like sometimes you get a receipt a little later. It was like a receipt. Oh, I must have done something right, because I seemed to be handling this situation better than I expected.
Because that's also, it became juxtaposed in the sense that how you very frankly, you reveal how when you left the monastery, you fell into a deep depression, and it's easy as a reader to understand how it circulates in your head that this is actually what you were doing in the monastery, was trying to avoid being hit by all this.
Yes,
and
it's like the total kind of ego knockout. You've worked on yourself for 17 years full time. You climb out of the protected little, tool shop and step into normal life, and you fall into a depression. And I guess the expectations I imagined people had was that I wouldn't have much personal problems anymore after 17 years as a Buddhist monk. I think if life was that straightforward, everybody would be a Buddhist monk or nun.
But then on the other hand, I mean, that kind of heightens the fact that, I don't know, whether that changing circumstances in life are something that everyone is familiar with, and that's many of us sort of accept the fact that they may affect us. We may drop out of job, or we may want to do something else than we're doing, but maybe won't find it immediately or something. But few of us actually imagine that one morning we wake up and we'll be diagnosed with a mortal disease. But then when that happened, then you found your footing, which is somehow it's heartwarming.
Yeah, thank goodness. This illness is hard enough without adding problems by being psychologically more confused than necessary.
Yes, yeah. So what do you think, what do you wish that the reader would come away with from reading your book?
Well, I'll start by telling you the most common response, which sometimes surprises me, one of the words that are very frequent when readers describe the experience from reading the book is it gives them hope. And there's something very lovely about that, you know, it gives them hope. Another kind of paradoxical thing is in the first version of the book, which was written by, you know, somebody who helped me write it, there were little pieces of advice at the end of each chapter. And I said, that's not how I do things. I avoid giving advice. I don't believe in giving advice nobody has asked for. So please take away all the little advice at the end of each chapter. And then when people respond to reading the book in its final form, they say, there's so much helpful advice for day-to-day living in the book. So of course, you know, people find that it actually, there are simple enough things to remember that you can actually apply immediately and find it becomes a little bit easier to live your own life. Even though I avoided advice, of course, you know, the quotes, the stories, they do contain snippets of simple, you know, advice. So that's a very happy feedback for me, that people actually find the book helpful for living their own lives.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased that people find it funny, you know. I can't even remember the funny passages, but apparently people find it funny in parts, and I'm very pleased with that.
Well, I think, for example, the honesty when you're meditating and you keep falling asleep.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, you know, you go to a spa for a weekend or you try a yoga class or something and you realize, wow, this is really hard to meditate. They can recognize themselves in that. And then also in Sweden, I have a special role because I've done some, as you're well aware, we have this series of summer radio programs where, you know, one person each day makes a program. And that's, you know, when you do that, over 1 million Swedes will listen to it. And I've done that twice. And, you know, the format with voice is, of course, closer to the bone in some ways. So my radio programs 2 summers have moved people. And then when they read the book, they kind of hear my voice, even if they read it, because they've heard my voice on the radio. And so they find themselves moved. And I think when you publish a book, at least speaking for myself, more than anything else, I hope that the reader will be moved, you know. So I hear that quite a lot, and that's, of course, incredibly pleasing and gladdening.
Yeah. Is there something that you would like to wishes that you would like to send to your Finnish readers?
Well, I have an innate liking for the Finnish culture. You know, it's probably tiring for Finnish people to hear of Swedish people's love of, for example, the Moomin trolls, but there's a lot more. My godfather was Finnish.
Okay.
I've always liked Finnish literature. You know, you could almost compare some Finnish literature to Zen Buddhism. It's very scaled down, very bare bones. You do not use more words than you need, and you get more said by writing shorter sentences with fewer words. Yeah. So I myself, I appreciate somebody who can be brief and still get to the point with some poetry. And to me, Finnish culture, literary culture stands for that, you know. So you can probably imagine that for somebody who's never written a book before, who doesn't see themselves as an author, to now find that the book has been is going to be published as of now in 19 countries, you know, Korea, Russia, a kind of whole array of countries. It's completely mind-boggling. I never in my wildest dream could have imagined something like this. But of course, the countries closer to us, like Norway is publishing about now also. The Danish response was a bit funny. Denmark hasn't decided to publish it yet. The Danish publishing houses said, well, if it would have been a Danish ex-monk, we would have been interested. So we'll see. They might change their minds still. But yeah, I know a lot of people who either come from the Swedish-speaking side of Finland, or Finnish people of both Swedish and Finnish-speaking descent who live in Sweden. And of course, they've already started telling me that they're passing on this book to their near and dear ones. So that's very pleasing.
Yes. Oh yeah, and it's good to hear that you appreciate the Moomin trolls. Tove Jansson was.
Oh yeah, I love it. They were mystical. Were my first mystical experience with the Moomin trolls.
I think yes. For me,
but wait a second, isn't there even a quote from the Moomin father in the book?
Yes. I think there is. Yeah. Because it's I mean, I grew up reading the comic series, Moomin comic series. My older children grew up with the Japanese TV series, and their play acting would be just Moomin speak.
No, let's not talk about the Japanese version.
No, they added a few things, but yeah. I was okay.
It may be interesting to you. As monks and nuns in our tradition, didn't use money at all. But if somebody said, "Is there anything you need?" then we could express a wish.
Yes,
and there was enough people to ask me the question if I needed anything for me to have a complete set of the Moomin Troll books in Swedish by Tove Jansson as a monk with me.
Oh, that is heartwarming. Okay. At this point, thank you very much for taking the time and the trouble. I appreciate it enormously. I hope you will find loads and loads of readers in Finland, and I also hope that if there is something that comes to your mind that you would like us to do now or later, you can please pass on the message, and it will be a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Niko. Thank you for your trust and confidence that you've given in the book and in me, in extension. So very pleasing talking to you, very mind-boggling, like I said, that it's going to be available in other languages and other countries.
Yes.
And all the best, with the launch of the book.
Thank you very much. And I hope you'll have a safe and rewarding fall ahead of you, or all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.